Breaking tonight, the partial verdict just reached in the Sean Diddy Combs case. The jury agreeing on all but one count, the racketeering conspiracy charge. The back and forth inside of court ending with the judge telling the jury to keep deliberating what Diddy whispered to his family as he got up to leave. Also tonight, the travel mess for millions along the East Coast as storms upend holiday plans. Flash floods inundating roads, a car on fire, trapped in the rising waters. Thunderstorms triggering ground stops at major airports. Meteorologist Bill Karen standing by. The urgent warning tonight for beachgoers after potentially harmful bacteria forces dozens of beaches to shut down. The health concerns ahead of the July 4th holiday. President Trump's big, beautiful bill moving on to the House after the Senate narrowly pushed it over the finish line. The moment our team captured highlighting the GOP divide, we'll play it for you, and the reignited feud between Trump and Elon Musk, what both are now threatening. Major fentanyl bust will take you inside the months-long sting operation. DEA informants posing as drug traffickers to arrest Chinese nationals producing the raw materials for fentanyl. The rare weather phenomenon caught on camera, video of the massive roll cloud. Take a look, leaving beachgoers in awe. And Lululemon says they're over the dupes, the company taking legal action against Costco for selling their $128 pants for just $10. And good evening. We do come on the air tonight with that breaking news. A partial verdict reached in the Sean Diddy Combs trial. A jury saying they've reached a decision on all but one charge after deliberating for just over 12 hours. The big unknown tonight is what that decision is. Combs faces 5 criminal counts. You see them right here. But it's that first charge at the top of racketeering conspiracy that they can't seem to agree on, at least not yet. Our team of legal experts standing by with what could be delaying the decision. It comes after weeks of intense and emotional testimony from star witnesses, including Combs' ex-girlfriend, Cassie. The prosecution arguing Combs used his influence and power to run a criminal enterprise, going into excruciating detail about those alleged freak-offs. Also pointing to evidence from raids at Combs' Miami and Los Angeles mansions, which included guns, ammo, and, of course, baby oil. Combs has denied all the charges, but tonight his fate still remains in the hands of these jurors as they are set to return tomorrow to continue deliberating on that final count. We have a lot to get to this evening. We want to start with Chloe Malas, who was in court. Chloe joins us now live. What did Combs do when they came back essentially so fast with a partial verdict?
Tom, it was a stunning moment, and I was actually in the courthouse watching Combs as he was reading the latest note from the jury, and his attorneys, in a very powerful scene, they huddled around him. It was almost ominous, and he put his head in his hands, even rubbing his eyes at one point, looking clearly dejected.
We've reached a verdict on counts 2, 3, 4, and 5. Read the note from the jury that came just after 4 o'clock. But we cannot reach a verdict on count 1, they wrote, because some jurors have unpersuadable views. That means they've reached a unanimous decision on whether Sean Diddy Combs is guilty of sex trafficking and transportation to engage in prostitution. But the jury of 8 men and 4 women is split on the most serious and complex charge, racketeering conspiracy. For that count, jurors must decide whether they believe Combs ran a criminal organization and committed underlying crimes like kidnapping and arson. Late today, the judge urging the jury to keep deliberating to try to reach a decision on that last count before revealing their verdict. As the jury's note came in, Combs' attorneys hugged and formed a circle around the music mogul, who put his head in his hands, at one point giving a thumbs up to his family. During the 7-week trial, prosecutors alleged that the music mogul ran a criminal enterprise and used power, violence, and fear to get what he wanted. Calling 34 witnesses, including 2 of Combs' former girlfriends, Cassie Ventura and another known only as Jane. Combs opting not to testify, his defense team calling no witnesses, telling the jury that the claims against Combs were badly exaggerated and that physical abuse and love of baby oil are not federal crimes. The jury will resume deliberations tomorrow morning.
All right, Chloe is back with us in front of the courthouse. And for legal analysis here tonight on Top Story, we have former federal prosecutor Kristen Fedden and NBC News senior legal analyst correspondent Laura Jarrett, good friends to Top Story. Chloe, I'm going to go back to you. Take us back into the courthouse. What else did you observe Diddy doing, especially when he left court as well?
Yeah, you know, so as he was leaving, he actually turned around and looked at his family. His daughters were in there, some other of his children, and his mother, Janice, who has been in there every single day of the trial. And his mother asked about the verdicts, and Combs said they came back with 4 verdicts, and we're waiting on count 1. It'll be all right. I love you. He had a slight smile, Tom, but that usual optimism that you and I have talked about, that I've seen when I've been in the courtroom, it wasn't there. And this coming from a guy who yesterday was holding up the cover of those 2 books we talked about, The Power of Positive Thinking and The Happiness Advantage.
Yeah, it seems there's a vibe shift, but again, we don't know what the jury's decided. Kristen, I'm going to go to you now. Count 1 is racketeering. It's the most complicated one, the most punitive as well if he's convicted. Was that the right charge to bring against Diddy? Can we read anything in the jury's actions right now?
I think we can read a lot in the jury's actions. Do I think it was the right move by the prosecution? Absolutely, hands down. Why? Well, because with the RICO charge, what the prosecution can do is they can show from 2004 all the way up to 2024 that there was a pattern of power, exertion, control, all in the form of threats, physical violence, guns, all of that. They can show that pattern to the jury. Even if they don't get that as a conviction, the jury is now heard all of the acts of Sean Puffy Diddy Combs, and then they heard of all of those criminal acts, even if they only get convictions on those 4 standalone crimes, the 2 sex trafficking and the 2 transportation of prostitution crimes.
It allows them to tell the full story.
Yeah, I'm going to ask our great director, Brett Holy, if you can put up that full screen we had of all the charges, because I want to ask Laura about this. I mean, look, we can't read the jury's mind. We have no idea what they decided. But in your expertise and your history covering the courts, what do you think this means? Can we read any tea leaves? They came back, I think, kind of fast. It was really a day and a little bit of deliberating, and they have unanimous decisions on 4 out of 5 of these. What do you think they're thinking?
Yeah, my guess is whatever the verdict is, it's the same on count 2, 3, 4, and 5, right? I don't think they're probably splitting the baby on that, although they could, because they are different survivors that are involved there, right? We have Cassie, you have Jane, so that's what the counts correlate to. Maybe they think something happened to Cassie that's different from Jane. There was different evidence. They provided different testimony, so I don't want to make it seem like this is a fully baked thing. We have no idea what's going on in that jury room, Tom, but as Kristen said, I think the RICO thing allows them to bring in conduct that they wouldn't be able to bring in otherwise, right? Conduct stretching back to 2004 would be past the statute of limitations. But because they've done RICO, they get to use all of that to tell a much deeper and more troubling story.
Let me follow up, though, on those 4 counts that we do know that they've reached a verdict on. Did the prosecution, in your opinion, provide enough evidence? I mean, was that the stronger of the two cases if we were to split the prostitution and the racketeering up?
Yes, because it's simpler, right? People can get their heads around somebody using force.
You called the prostitute, you flew the prostitute, that kind of thing.
And they have the video.
And you paid the prostitute,
They've seen the video of Cassie on tape being beaten. He's been apologetic for that. He can't get around that video, right? So they already have that. Even if they don't have a video as it relates to Jane, they've seen that course of conduct as it relates to it. I think they can get their heads around that in an easier way than a criminal enterprise. When people think about a criminal enterprise, they think about the mob, right? They think about people running drugs and guns. This is not that.
For profit.
For profit. Yeah. This is not that. This is for his personal use. Now, there's no question that the prosecutors have said he had all these people under him working desperately to try to, prop him up and protect him, and there's money involved and drugs involved. But it's not what people typically think of.
It's a great point, right? What was the motive here, and why would he have that RICO enterprise? I want to go back to Chloe, because we still have her outside the courthouse. Chloe, take us back into that courtroom again, because we know there was also some sort of movements from the attorneys when the jury came back as well. Talk to us about how his legal team was feeling and looking.
I mean, Tom, when I was inside, I looked at the clock. It was about 4:10. I actually shared an elevator with Mark Agnifilo, the lead attorney, who knew what I didn't know was that there was another jury note. Many people thought that, hey, it's just the jury saying it's time to go home. But it was so tense. I mean, you had Brian Steele at one point just really passionately talking with his hands. You had Xavier Donaldson leaning over the front of the table. At one point, I thought maybe Combs was even crying. I mean, that is how how intense the situation was. When those jurors, they came back into the room, they were stoic. You know, I've had my eyes on so many of them. And, you know, listen, like, it's very hard to say what's going to happen with the sex trafficking on Cassie Ventura and Jane, because while sitting in there and looking in these jurors' faces, although I know you can't always read the tea leaves, it's very clear that several of those jurors, they were not convinced during the prosecution's testimony from some of those 34 witnesses. Also, the closing arguments, some rolling their eyes, some looking very exasperated. At times, remember, we talked about, Tom, some jurors even falling asleep. So, again, tomorrow they will go back in there and deliberate.
Yeah.
But Combs looking very depressed as he turned around and looked at his family. Normally he's doing those prayer signs, maybe even a heart symbol. Not today.
Kristen, what do you think the lawyers are reading that, and Sean Diddy Combs is reading as well? What tea leaves do you think they're reading?
I think they're thinking that there is a conviction, as at least to counts 2 and 3, or 4 and 5, related to Cassie and related to
Why?
Jane.
Because it came back so fast, or just?
Because I don't see how they are thinking about Rico if, in fact, he didn't commit those sex trafficking crimes or the transportation for the purpose of prostitution crimes. Those standalone crimes are simpler. They're easier. Did he? And then you have the video. Look at all of the mountain of evidence.
Right.
They had to have at least found that there was some type of sex trafficking charge. Those are easy. Those are standard. Those are simpler crimes. But the complexity of the RICO charge, the enterprise, that's where it becomes sticky. And yes, I think the prosecution had sufficient credible evidence to bring the charge. But is it enough to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, to convince every single juror? That's the sticky part.
Laura, 2 questions. One, walk our viewers quickly through, if he does beat the RICO charge, what kind of prison time could he still face if he is convicted on the other ones? And 2, how does the July 4th holiday play into this? Because I know there's a lot of back and forth about that.
If he is convicted on 2 through 5, he is facing 15 to life. It is
15 to life.
It is not. It is not nothing, right? So even though we think about RICO being something so significant, the 15 to life, because he's using force and fraud and coercion, it's serious. The July 4th holiday is a specter here because usually jurors are not inclined to come back after a holiday, so they don't want to come back on Monday. And so there's this sort of looming pressure to try to see, can they get this done before or not? They decided today they're not even going to bring it up today. They want to see how tomorrow plays out.
So tomorrow's going to be a big day.
Tomorrow's going to be an enormous day because if they are still hung at the end of tomorrow on count 1, then the question is, when we were talking about this in the break, does the judge say, no, I need you to keep going, or does the judge say, I think we've done all we can do on
And that could be till next Tuesday. Okay. All right, guys. Thank you so much, Laura, Kristen, Greg. Chloe, thank you as well. We're going to turn to the big story we're following tonight, the severe weather threatening holiday travel. Right now, 26 million are under flood alerts and 33 million are at risk for intense storms targeting millions in the Northeast, all during one of the summer's busiest travel weeks. NBC's Tom Costello is at Newark Airport as crowds are trying to catch flights. Tom, how's it looking tonight?
Hey, Tom, good evening. So we have seen this at many airports, but right now we've got significant delays in the New York City area. At Newark, we've got delays running several hours. A ground stop has been in effect now for some time. Ground stops and ground delays from New York City all the way down to Washington, D.C. In total, we've seen a total of more than 5,600 delays, more than 1,800 cancellations. Tuesday evening and day 2 of severe weather tearing into the I-95 corridor, with D.C. and Virginia getting sheets of rain, heavy flooding in Maryland and New Jersey. Hours-long ground delays and ground stops at all 3 New York area airports and Philly, Baltimore, and D.C., with delays building nationwide.
Ethiopian 509, give way to Air India to disconnect on spot 26. You may disconnect on spot 27.
Inside United Airlines Newark Ops Center, a tightly choreographed ballet. Newark is United's busiest East Coast hub, 760 departing and arriving flights every day.
As we start to see the weather impacts start to build up out here to the west, so some of our west fixes are going to get hit.
Just 6 weeks after Newark melted down due to air traffic control equipment failures and the loss of runway 4 left. Now reopened, the airport is running at full throttle. Newark shares this airspace with 3 other airports, major airports, JFK, LaGuardia, Teterboro. There's also 50 smaller airports nearby, and it makes this the most complicated airspace in the country.
Athens inbound 125 will have a medical emergency on board. ETA is 1356.
Getting priority clearance, a United flight from Athens with a 25-year-old in medical distress.
The other aircraft taxiing is going to have to hold, and then the medical emergency is the first aircraft on the ground and to that gate.
Amazingly, United says Newark is now the Big Apple's most on-time airport.
Depending on the airplane type, we have between 30 and about an hour and 10 minutes to turn that plane.
Tonight, Mother Nature seems intent on ruining best-laid plans.
How well can we manage this tonight so tomorrow morning looks like nothing ever happened?
Tom Costello, NBC News, Newark Airport.
That's the big challenge, and of course the weather is the unknown, but let's get right over to NBC meteorologist Bill Cairns. Bill, is there any relief in sight, or should people really be watching and following all the forecasts in their areas?
Yeah, after about 10 p.m., but by then it's too late for a lot of the crews. So this is as bad as it gets. Still ground stops. That means planes are not landing in Baltimore and also at Dulles and at Reagan. Newark's 195-minute delay. That's over 3 hours, 2 hours at LaGuardia. We also have a lot of flash flooding issues. The wind damage hasn't been overall too bad, about 50,000 people without power right now. But Philadelphia, Reading, Baltimore, the Jersey Shore, about from Long Branch all the way to Point Pleasant, all under flash flood warnings at this hour. A lot of standing water on the roads. The worst of the storms are in between Hartford now and heading up Interstate 90 towards Boston, New York City. Just plain old rain. Severe thunderstorms from south of Point Pleasant down to Atlantic City. And we've just cleared I-95. Now they're moving to the east here of Fredericksburg. Richmond, you're finally getting a break too. But Tom, we got another 2 hours of this.
Yeah, no, and Bill, before you go, can we already talk about July 4th? I mean, I got the Roman candles ready. Will I be able to fire them off on July 4th?
Safely, yes, of course. We are watching a lot of clear weather out there. 4th of July looks 100 times better than what we're seeing tonight. My only concerns, thunderstorms will be ending in Orlando and Tampa. Also, our friends from Fargo to Minneapolis, the rest of the country, Tom, this is about as good as it's going to get.
Yeah, it looks great there. Okay, hopefully it holds. Bill, we thank you for that. We want to go to the other major news that we're talking about as well, that holiday travel colliding with high bacteria levels at beaches across the country, prompting closures from New York to Illinois to California. NBC's Maggie Vespa joins us now from Highland Park, Illinois, just outside of Chicago. And Maggie, what more can you tell us about those closures?
Hey, Tom, we know these closures are rapidly stacking up. We're talking about at least 17 beaches in the Chicago area closed to swimmers so people can sit on the sand, obviously, but health officials are pleading with them not to go in the water. And then we're seeing these really stack up across the country, too. At least 5 states from New York to California, including Massachusetts, Michigan, Illinois, obviously, Washington State, all tracking closures, beach closures due to bacteria levels rising in the water. There's no, from what we can tell from public health officials, one kind of common thread culprit across all of these. We're obviously talking about different regions. In Washington State, they're talking about toxic algae. Parts of this area talking about E. coli. But in a lot of areas, one of particular concern as public health officials kind of work through this and figure out what's going on here is something called Vibrio. That is a bacteria that occurs naturally in coastal waters, normally at low, safe levels. But it can spike amid basically extreme heat and severe heavy rain. Basically, infection works like this. If swimmers swallow water or swim with open wounds that contaminated water gets into, that's how they can get infected. And the symptoms really can be severe, ranging from basically stomach issues, including cramps, nausea, vomiting, fever, chills. In severe cases, it can get really extreme, even potentially, health officials warn, causing death. So once again, people, they say, can come sit along the beach, sit here, do their thing. They know this is horrible timing with the 4th of July just days away, but they are pleading with people as the holiday approaches. Obviously, peak summer just continues to check local beach conditions, adjust their plans, and if they're at an area where beaches are closed or advisories are being put out, to just stay out of the water for as long as those remain in effect. Just warning again that this could be really serious. Tom.
Yeah, that bacteria is scarier than Jaws. All right, Maggie Vespa, we thank you for that. To Washington now, where President Trump's big, beautiful bill finally made it across the finish line in the Senate. It was the longest voting period in Senate history. Look at this, lasting almost 27 hours, with senators voting 49 times. Here are the 3 Republicans who opposed the bill, forcing Vice President J.D. Vance to cast the tie-breaking vote. Susan Collins of Maine, Rand Paul of Kentucky, and Tom Tillis of North Carolina. But it's not a victory for Trump just yet. The bill now goes back to the House for another vote, where it still faces criticism from both sides of the aisle. NBC senior Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles explains.
Tonight, the dramatic moment, Vice President Vance breaking a tie vote.
The Vice President votes in the affirmative. The bill as amended is passed.
In a major win for President Trump, the Senate narrowly passing what he calls his big, beautiful bill, which extends the Trump tax cuts, increases border security, and eliminates taxes on tips and overtime.
As President Trump would say, promises made, promises kept.
but 3 Republicans and every Democrat voting no.
Republicans passed the biggest tax breaks for billionaires ever seen.
Ultimately, it came down to Alaska Republican Lisa Murkowski, who negotiated a special carve-out for Alaska to soften the blow of the changes to Medicaid, drawing the ire of Kentucky's Rand Paul, who voted no.
They chose to add more pork and subsidies for Alaska to secure that.
We pressed Murkowski.
Senator Paul said that that your vote was a bailout for Alaska at the expense of the rest of the country.
Oh, my God.
That's what Senator Paul said.
My question was easy. Senator, we've got
I'm just asking for your response.
My response is I have an obligation to the people of the state of Alaska. And I live up to that every single day.
Now the bill goes back to the House. President Trump optimistic.
Actually, I think it will be easier in the House than it was in the Senate.
And responding to new criticism of the bill from Elon Musk, who says it's full of, quote, insane spending. The president posting, without subsidies, Elon would probably have to close up shop and head back home to South Africa.
Doge is going to look at Musk, and if Doge looks at Musk, we're going to save a fortune.
While Speaker Johnson insisting he can get the bill through the House again, despite a razor-thin Republican majority.
A lot of work ahead, but that's the job, so we'll get it done.
All right, Ryan Nobles joins us live from Capitol Hill. And Ryan, you know, we saw that moment there with Senator Murkowski. And tonight I know you have new reporting on fresh opposition to this bill in the House from also Republicans?
Yeah, that's right, Tom. There are many House conservatives who are not happy with the changes that were made by the Senate. And there are some indicating that as it stands right now, they are no votes. But GOP leaders, including the Speaker, they believe with President Trump's help, they will get the votes they need to get this bill over the finish line and to the president's desk by Friday. Tom.
Ryan Nobles for us tonight. Ryan, great work out there. Now to that shocking development in the murder case of 4 University of Idaho students. A hearing is now scheduled for tomorrow morning after suspect Brian Kohberger appears to have set to accept a plea deal, a move that is sparking mixed reactions among the victims' families. Here's Liz Kreutz from Boise.
Tonight, families of the victims reacting to that stunning twist in the University of Idaho quadruple murder case.
And Idaho's failed. They failed me. They failed my whole family.
The father of victim Kaylee Gonzalez saying he is outraged at the prosecution, who he says told the family suspect Brian Kohberger has agreed to plead guilty to the murder of his daughter and 3 others, Madison Mogen, Ethan Chapin, and Xana Kernodle, in exchange for taking the death penalty off the table, instead serving life without the possibility of parole.
This is not justice. This is a joke.
According to the Idaho Statesman, the prosecution sent the victims' families a letter, not reviewed by NBC News, saying the plea deal ensures that the defendant will be convicted and will not be able to put you and other families through the uncertainty of decades of post-conviction appeals.
For the victims, their families, it gives them some finality.
Criminal defense attorney Edwina Elcox says the move comes amid mounting evidence against Kohberger, including this video obtained exclusively by Dateline showing a white car making repeated passes at a house where minutes later the 4 students were stabbed to death. The state planning to allege at the wheel Brian Kohberger.
What do you think the conversation was like between Kohberger and his attorneys?
This is a bad fact for you. This is what this looks like. If you can get the death penalty off the table, this is a deal that you should absolutely be considering taking.
Okay, Liz Kreutz joins us tonight from Boise, Idaho. Liz, we had some of this reporting yesterday. I know you've sort of worked it a little bit more and developed it a little bit more. The family members of the victims have mixed feelings on this plea deal. What do we know?
Yeah, it seems like some of the family members are completely outraged by this potential plea deal, while others might be feeling some kind of sense of relief about it. Some of those who are pretty upset by this, it's because they feel like the death penalty for them would provide that justice that they were looking for, and also that having a trial might allow some of the key questions to be answered, particularly motive and also where that murder weapon still is. And there's just a tragic statement from Kaylee Gonzalez, her sister, putting out on Facebook that if he just spends life in prison, Kohberger, he will still get to speak, form relationships, and engage with the world. Meanwhile, our loved ones have been silenced forever. But meanwhile, Tom, Ethan Chapin's parents, who said that they were not going to attend the trial because they just want to have closure in this tragic case, they say they will be here at the hearing tomorrow in support of the plea deal, Tom.
Okay, Liz Kreutz with a lot of new reporting there. Liz, we thank you. We are back in a moment with an NBC News exclusive, a fentanyl bust like you've never seen before. We'll show you the undercover sting to catch Chinese nationals selling the raw materials needed to produce the deadly drug. And alligator Alcatraz, President Trump greeted by protesters as he tours the migrant detention camp in the Florida Everglades. Our cameras capturing the alligators, officials say, will act as natural deterrents. Stay with us. We're back tonight with exclusive access into a DEA sting that led to the arrest of 2 Chinese nationals for their role in America's fentanyl crisis. Prosecutors say they sold the raw materials to make the deadly drug. NBC's Stephanie Gosk has this report.
Come to China.
This was no friendly call.
I'm looking up to fate to make up to 50 to 55 kilos of the final products.
It was a drug deal, according to federal prosecutors. The video exclusively obtained by NBC News. The executives worked for a Marvel Biotech, a China-based company that sold fentanyl precursors, the raw chemicals used to make the deadly drug. Boasting online 100% stealth shipping, prosecutors say, by disguising their illicit products as dog food, nuts, and motor oil.
The Chinese company arranged to have roughly 3 kilos of the precursor sent to this address in Lower Manhattan. But what they didn't realize was that the person they were dealing with was not a drug trafficker. He was actually a DEA informant. And this was the beginning of a sting operation that was going to put both of them behind bars.
A Marvel Biotech is one of thousands of companies just like it, according to Ray Donovan, former DEA chief of operations.
It was one of those companies that we knew was connected to Sinaloa cartel.
In Mexico.
In Mexico.
That's the cartel once run by notorious drug lord El Chapo Guzman, who now sits in federal prison in Florida. Donovan helped put him there. But soon after that conviction, the DEA's strategy to fight fentanyl started shifting.
We had to do more to go after the bad actors that were way upstream.
Bad actors like a Marvel Biotech. But to make the arrest, the DEA had to lure them out of China. And that's what they did. Here they are sipping coffee in the lobby of a fancy hotel in Fiji in 2023, hoping to secure a huge sale.
Me, like in Mexico, like I pay officials so that way I don't have problems.
Moments later, both of the Chinese nationals were arrested and extradited to the U.S., where they were convicted on drug charges and money laundering. They will be sentenced in August.
How were you able to get these 2 particular people out of China to meet you in Fiji?
Money. So it always comes down to greed.
But Donovan says going after these companies is a game of whack-a-mole, and the U.S. needs China's help.
How can cooperation with the Chinese government affect this fight against fentanyl?
The cooperation with the Chinese government will immediately, overnight, impact the entire industry.
That quickly?
Yes.
Stephanie Goss joins us now live in studio. Let's pick it up where you left off there. You said we need China's help. Is China helping?
Well, last week, the Chinese government banned the production of 2 of these fentanyl precursors, but Donovan told me that that is basically superficial. And last year, Tom, there was this congressional report that found that the Chinese government was actually providing some tax breaks to some of these companies. It's an interesting moment right now because, as you know, the U.S. is in conversations with China, negotiations over tariffs. Fentanyl is part of that conversation right now.
Yeah, it's big. What a great story, though. Thank you for bringing it to
You're
us.
welcome.
You may have heard about the chicken who crossed the road, but have you heard about the pig? 2 South Carolina Highway Patrol troopers found out when they received a call from drivers on one of the state's busiest interstates. Take a look. The pig was rescued without injury, and troopers were able to get traffic moving. And listen to this. This is the good part. After the rescue, a member of the sheriff's department in Richland County, South Carolina, cooked the pig. No, I'm joking. Adopted the pig. They adopted that beautiful pig, and they're keeping it on the family farm. Just joking. All right, stay with us. We're back in a moment. All right, we're back with President Trump in Florida today, attending the opening of a brand new immigration detention facility in the Everglades. It's nicknamed Alligator Alcatraz for the dangerous wildlife nearby. Our Gabe Gutierrez getting a first look inside the sprawling new campus. Trump calls for more facilities just like it, but in other states.
deep in the Florida Everglades. Tonight, President Trump says this massive migrant detention camp, built in just 8 days, has an unusual deterrent to prevent any escapes.
Don't run in a straight line. Run like this.
He calls it Alligator Alcatraz.
It's meant more as a joke, but the more I thought of it, the more I liked it.
With gators clearly visible outside, NBC News getting a first look inside.
The partnership with the state has been great, right?
Acting ICE Director Todd Lyons telling us the goal is to keep detainees here no longer than 2 weeks, where they can appear before a judge and be deported from the camp's existing runway.
How would you respond to critics who think that this is not where immigrants should be housed?
Well, what I would say is that obviously individuals that want to come here to enjoy the American dream should think about returning on their own, so they're not in a detained setting, right?
President Trump was elected pledging to deport the record number of migrants who crossed into the U.S. under President Biden.
I ran on the issue of illegals, and we have to get them out.
According to data reviewed by NBC News, almost half of those currently in ICE custody have neither been convicted of nor charged with a crime.
Is the administration still going after the worst of the worst?
We are.
The administration stresses the priority is violent criminals, but anyone who is here illegally is breaking the law.
Through the course of another law enforcement investigation, we do come across people that are just here illegally. We will no longer turn a blind eye to that.
Still, environmental groups are suing.
Get the hell out of our Everglades.
While Trump supporters are cheering this detention center.
I think it's great. Get the holes out of here.
The Department of Homeland Security says this center will be paid for by FEMA funds the Biden administration previously used to house migrants, including in New York City. ICE's detention space around the country is at 140% capacity. So the president says this center could be a blueprint for other states. Tom?
Gabe Gutierrez down in Miami. Now to top stories news feed. We start with the Utah mom accused of killing her husband and then writing a children's book about grief. She's now indicted on new charges. Corey Richins charged with more than 24 counts of mortgage fraud, forgery, money laundering, and other unlawful activities. The new counts come 3 years after her husband, Eric Richins, was poisoned with a fentanyl-laced cocktail. Her murder trial is set to start in February of next year. She has pled not guilty to those charges. A stunning upset at Wimbledon today. Coco Gauff, the American tennis superstar, has been eliminated. Gauff became just the third woman in the Open era to lose in the first round at Wimbledon immediately after winning the French Open. Gauff, the current #2 seed, was plagued by mistakes after mistake, eliminated by unseeded Ukrainian tennis player Diana Yastremska. She dashed her dreams for back-to-back wins at a major. Okay, and wild footage captured a small plane crash, landing and flipping over in a South Carolina yard. Look at this. Security cam video caught the dramatic moment the pilot tried to land on the grass strip but came in way too hot. The pilot said he chose to flip the aircraft, rather than circling around to avoid hitting power lines. Luckily, he walked away from the crash with only scratches. And if you want to know what it's like to live like an NBA superstar, now you can. Michael Jordan's former mansion outside of Chicago is now available to rent through Airbnb. The estate in a Chicago suburb known as Champions Point is available for short-term stays, costing $330,000 for a 21-night stay for up to 12 people. Jordan built the home at the height of his career with the Chicago Bulls. It features 7 bedrooms and, in case you need them, 20 bathrooms. And, of course, a regulation-sized basketball court. Okay, we're going to switch gears here now to a serious story. We're following breaking news in the battle over transgender athletes in college sports. The Department of Education announcing that the University of Pennsylvania has agreed to ban transgender athletes in women's sports. Former UPenn swimmer Leah Thomas has been at the center of this hotly debated issue since she became the first openly transgender athlete to win a Division I title in 2022. The Department of Education opened an investigation into the university shortly after President Trump took office, alleging Thomas's participation denied women equal opportunities. The Education Department now says Penn has agreed to restore all D1 records and titles to athletes that were beat by Thomas. Our Stephen Romo is live on set with us tonight with the latest on this agreement. And Stephen, walk our viewers through what's happening, because this is a major moment.
Yeah, it certainly is. For UPenn, this means they're agreeing to ban trans women from playing in women's sports. It also means that the university agrees to adopt what the education department calls biology-based definitions of male and female. It also has to publicly state that it will not allow, quote, males in women's sports. But the effects on Thomas are even more stark here and personal for her. It wipes away her wins and her records, instead giving those to the women who lost to her in those competitions. And the school also has to write letters of apology, personalized letters of apology to each of those women. UPenn did post on its website today that it is agreeing to these terms following Title IX as it is interpreted by the Trump administration and those executive orders that are about, quote, keeping men out of women's sports. We did reach out to Thomas today to try to get her reaction from this, and we have not yet.
So, Stephen, viewers at home are going to be asking, why this? Why now?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's been so much pressure put on UPenn. $175 million in federal funding was frozen back in March. The Trump administration also started a Title IX investigation on the school. Those executive orders we just mentioned, as well as just amplifying voices of people who are criticizing UPenn and also criticizing Thomas. The Trump administration has also gone after public schools like K through 12 schools in Maine on this same topic. Maine sued the Trump administration but dropped the lawsuit when the Trump administration backed off from trying to cut federal funding from a nutrition program for young people. So the administration finding different ways to apply this pressure to get these schools to try to comply.
All right, Stephen Romo on that breaking news. Stephen, we thank you for that. Now, an escalating feud between Costco and Lululemon, the iconic athleisure brand, I should say, suing Costco, saying the big box giant has been ripping off some of their most popular items. Many of those so-called dupes have even gone viral online. NBC's Priscilla Thompson has the latest.
They have these sweaters that look just like my Lululemon hoodie.
They're the dupes taking over the internet.
They are quite literally the same fabric. And it's $12.99. It's not $100-something.
And now the courtroom, too. Lululemon is suing Costco, accusing the retail giant of unlawfully trading on its reputation, goodwill, and sweat equity by selling knockoffs of the brand's iconic activewear for a fraction of the price.
Only $13.99. You could literally get 8 of them for the price of 1 on their website. These feel just like Lululemon Aligns without the $100 price.
At issue, according to the suit, Lululemon's popular scuba hoodies, defined jackets, and ABC pants, which all retail for around $128. Check out this split screen. Costco's Danskin women's half zip sells for $7.97. Its Spider women's yoga jacket, $21.99. And these 5-pocket pants, $9.97. The suit even claiming a ripoff of Lululemon's trademark Tidewater teal hue.
How strong is Lululemon's case? It is solid, it is substantial, it is documented, but it is not a sure thing.
Susan Scafidi studies intellectual property and fashion and says these cases can be difficult to prove.
U.S. law is really rough on protection of clothing. You can always protect the labels and the logos, but it's really hard to protect a three-dimensional garment itself.
Costco has not responded to NBC's request for comment. Lululemon said in a statement, as an innovation-led company that invests significantly in the research, development, and design of our products, we take the responsibility of protecting and enforcing our intellectual property rights very seriously. Lululemon is seeking monetary damages from Costco and an end to the sales. Which could leave those Costco customers late to the trend, holding an empty bag.
Run to Costco.
All right, Priscilla joins us live from outside of Costco there in Houston. So, Priscilla, this isn't the first time Lululemon has sued in this way. How have other cases ended for them?
Yeah, so back in 2021, they sued Peloton over alleging infringement on some of their patents related to their bras and leggings, and they actually ended up settling. That suit was settled, and years later, they partnered with Peloton. And, Tom, I will tell you, I did some investigative research while we were here at Costco, and we were still able to find the pants on store shelves and also the yoga jacket. So they do still appear to be in stores, but I will tell you, when we looked online, there was only one item available. All the others were either listed as out of stock or the web pages had gone dark. Tom?
Priscilla, before you go, we saw a lot of people sort of comparing the way they felt. Do people say that they're comparable, at least when they put them on? And comfort, Lululemon is known for their comfort.
Yeah, so people online are saying that they are comparable, that this is an amazing dupe. And that expert that I spoke to pointed out that actually a couple of years ago, Lululemon did a dupe swap where if people would bring in their dupes, they could get a pair of Lululemon products. And so she says now it really is going to be about them making people believe that the Lululemon prices are worth it, which could be hard to do as folks are getting these dupes and saying that it feels almost exactly the same.
$10. It's tough to beat. Up next on Top Story, we're going to take you to the beach and some beachgoers stunned by this incredible sight in the sky, what's being called the tsunami of clouds. We'll explain. And is the country of Nicaragua silencing critics? The growing concerns after multiple dissidents are found dead. We'll explain after the break. All right, turning now to Top Story's Global Watch, where authorities say at least 36 people are dead following an explosion and fire at a factory in southern India on Monday. The state's health minister saying there was 108 workers in the factory when the accident occurred. The company did not share the cause of the incident yet, but said operations would stop for 90 days. The incident is now under investigation. Check this out in Portugal, a massive so-called roll cloud stunning beachgoers. The rare weather phenomenon, which looks like a giant wave, occurs when cold ocean air meets warm temperatures along the coast. The now viral cloud could be seen for several towns along the Portuguese coastline. Witnesses describe it as a tsunami of clouds. Pretty cool. And South Korea now battling an infestation of so-called love bugs, millions of them covering popular destinations near the capital city in Seoul. Video shows hikers overcome swatting the bugs who fly in pairs away, describing a, quote, blanket of insects. This deck, look at it, almost completely covered. Experts say rising temperatures have contributed to the influx in recent years. Okay, time now for the Americas and the growing fears tonight that Nicaragua is behind the assassinations of prominent critics inside of Costa Rica, where they fled to seek refuge after a 2018 uprising. The killings raising questions of just how far the country's co-presidents will go to silence dissenters. NBC's Priya Sridhar explains.
Tonight, the murder of a Nicaraguan military officer turned activist, raising fears the country is violently silencing dissenters, even outside its own borders. Roberto Samcam Ruiz, a vocal critic of Nicaragua's co-presidents, was gunned down last month in his home in the Costa Rican capital of San Jose, where he was living in exile, according to Costa Rica's Judicial Investigation Organization, who said at least 2 people were seen in the area prior to the attack, adding Samcam was hit with at least 8 bullets before dying at the scene. They say they're investigating this case as well as the recent attempted murder of another Ortega dissident. According to the New York Times, this is the 6th time a Nicaraguan opponent has been killed or abducted in Costa Rica since 2018. The year hundreds of thousands rose up in mass protests against President Daniel Ortega and his wife, Rosario Maria. Ultimately, Ortega's government squashed the protests, killing more than 300 people.
That's when, he decided to really take a more authoritarian turn into something like outright dictatorship. And so what you've seen since 2018 is a total shutdown of avenues for dissent or opposition in the country.
The crackdown prompting 300,000 Nicaraguans to seek asylum in neighboring Costa Rica, according to the United Nations. Among the exiles, Samcam, who spent the last few years writing a book about the Ortega regime's corruption.
The point of these attacks is to have a chilling effect on the Nicaraguan community abroad.
Last January, 35-year-old Joao Maldonado, another Nicaraguan government critic, was shot in Costa Rica, the second attempt on his life in 3 years. In April, Maldonado spoke with a Nicaraguan outlet about the shooting that he says left him hospitalized for 7 months, blaming the dictatorship of the regime in Nicaragua for the attack, saying they have people in Costa Rica working for them.
And it's part of this troubling pattern where it seems not only is Daniel Ortega content to silence all dissent within his own country, he's actually trying to silence those who go abroad.
Costa Rica's president, Rodrigo Chavez Robles, has previously denied that Nicaraguan operatives are working in his country and has yet to comment on Samcam's killing. The Trump administration has ended the refugee program that would have allowed a lot of the Nicaraguan exiles to seek protection here in the United States. So now many of those exiles who are living in Costa Rica are looking for a new place to go because of these targeted killings. Tom?
We thank you for watching Top Story. That does it for us on this Tuesday night. Stay right there. More news on the way. We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.